Welcome to Inflection Time. I'm Silken Laumann. Every life has turning points, those moments that change everything. In this podcast, I sit down with remarkable people to explore the challenges, choices, and unexpected events that shape who we are. From heartbreak to triumph, fear to clarity, these are the stories that remind us that growth isn't linear and meaning is often found in the moments we least expect. Inflection Time, uncovering the moments that make us. In this episode of Inflection Time, I sit down with Taylor Elgersma, Vanier Cup champion, two-time OUA champion, MVP, and 2023 U Sports Offensive Player of the Year. After an extraordinary university football career, Taylor earned a spot at the Green Bay Packers minicamp, and he continues to chase his dream with quiet tenacity. But you know what stands out most isn't just his athletic talent. It's his belief in himself, in leadership, growth, and I think the power of failing. And he's in love with the process, not the outcome. Taylor reminded me that the path to greatness rarely unfolds in a straight line. It takes humility, resilience, and the courage to keep showing up. It's a powerful reminder that the best results often follow when we stop chasing them and start trusting the process. This is Inflection Time, uncovering the moments that make us. Thank you for joining me. Taylor Elgersma, it is so nice to have you here. And it's really nice to be interviewing an athlete. I have a lot of musicians this season, and I always feel like athletes, when they talk together, there's just an affinity. I mean, you're football.
Yep.
I don't know much about football. You were just admitting you don't know that much about rowing.
Yeah.
So let's talk. And you can tell me a little bit about, first of all, you've had an incredibly exciting year and a half. You are an amazing football player. It wasn't your first sport.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? You were first hockey player, I think, right?
Yeah.
That was your first
Yeah,
love, like every other Canadian boy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So how did you find football?
Yeah. I found football pretty organically. Like you said, I was a hockey player. And growing up, my goal was always to make the OHL and pursue hockey. And then when I got into high school, our high school football team needed a quarterback, and I just kind of came out there in grade 10, and I knew I could throw the football because I always threw the football with my grandpa in the backyard. And I started throwing it, and they, fell in love with it right away. And I realized, the different aspects of the quarterback position. I always enjoyed the physical nature of hockey, and football is obviously a very, very physical sport. But being like a quarterback, you get to really use your mind and your leadership abilities. And I fell in love with that aspect of the position. And ever since then, I just switched over and been pursuing football.
Wow. And football, it's a thinking sport, and the quarterback especially, right? Like, I always say rowing, and maybe other rowers were different, but I mean, you usually don't have great hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
And we like to go in a straight line, and you got your race strategy, you have it's a physical sport, so you have to be in the pain zone a lot.
Yes.
Football is both, right? Like, you've got to be able to run, you've got to be able to jump, you've got to be able to hit, you got to be able to throw, of course.
Yeah.
And then there's this tactical aspect. So how do you do all of that at once? Like, how can you be thinking and then also pushing yourself? So
you're so right. I mean, football is a huge balance of the physical and the mental, and you see that in the way that we train as well. Like, we spend more time watching film and installing plays and watching defenses, or just as much time doing that as we do actually practicing on the field throughout the week. And so that's one of the biggest things about football that maybe people who aren't involved in the game don't realize, is how much time goes in to studying. And, especially when you get to higher up levels. I mean, when I was with the Packers, we were installing 100 and 120 plays a night in training camp. And
how would you break that down, like physical versus like video and half and half? Or
I think that at my position specifically, football it's very position specific sport. And so, some of the, O-line and D-line, those guys, they have to spend more time on the physical because, there's only so many things schematically that they can do. And so it ultimately relies on, who's bigger, stronger, faster, and winning your matchups. But at the quarterback position, you have to understand what all, the guys on your side of the ball are doing, but also what every single guy on the defensive side of the ball is doing so that you understand how to best attack it. And so most of the time in the quarterback position is spent trying to understand defenses, learn what we're going to go up against that week, and then try and figure out what our best plans of attacks are to kind of beat that defense.
As an Olympic athlete and the founder of Unsinkable, a mental health charity, I know the power of a supportive community in reaching your physical and mental fitness goals. That's why I love Good Life Fitness. It's more than a gym. It's a place where you can really thrive and find connection. As a special thanks for joining today, you can experience it yourself with an exclusive 7-day pass to any Good Life Fitness location across Canada. Visit the link in this podcast description for access. All of my podcast guests have shared the importance of physical activity in their lives. Together, let's build a healthier and happier Canada. It hits me as kind of funny that we're sitting here and you're telling me about, but you're also telling our audience about football, because this would never happen in this country if we were talking about hockey, right?
Yeah.
Everybody understands hockey with the possible exception of me. And you are in some ways, you're a trailblazer in Canadian football, in that you were invited by the Green Bay Packers to play with them to try to make the team. And I mean, that was a really seminal moment, not only in your career, but in Canadian football. Can you tell me about that moment when you found out, you were invited?
Yeah, I think that the entire draft process was, very big for me, and I put a lot of time and effort into, as soon as my senior season ended at Laurier, attacking the draft process and putting my best foot forward. And you don't really ever know how those things are going to turn out, especially being from Canada and playing Canadian college football and knowing
Which is totally different, right?
Completely different. And knowing that there hadn't really been guys from Canada who had gotten legitimate opportunities in the NFL many times before. And obviously there's few exceptions here and there, but I knew it was going to be tough. And so as the draft process kind of unfolded, and then at the end of it, being able to get signed to Green Bay and know that I was going to go there and compete in training camp and get to play in the preseason. I mean, when it happened, there was a lot of excitement, but I think, as you know, high level athletes and people who are chasing big things, immediately as one thing happens, you kind of turn your eyes to the next thing. And so I didn't necessarily take a lot of time to enjoy and be super excited because I was taking my eyes on how can I make this football team and what's the next step for my career and how can I go represent myself in Canada well in the preseason. And so, I think that it will be a thing that when the journey's done and when I'm done playing football, maybe 10 years after I'm done playing football, when my career's done, I'll be able to look back and kind of reflect on it a little bit more, but still being in it right now, my mind kind of shifts to the next.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. And I don't know if that mindset you ever totally drop it as an athlete. And I've looked back at my career and thought the same thing. Why didn't I savor, that bronze medal? Why didn't I savor winning the world championships? And I mean, I won the world championships in 1991 in the single sculls. And it was really for me, the pinnacle of, what I ended up doing in sport. But I just remember across the finish line, you have that moment of elation and oh my God, I'm the world champion, and you party that night. And then the next day, literally the next day, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going into the Olympics as world champion and I got a target on my back, and you're immediately thinking what's going to happen. And it sounds like that, even though that was such a big event for Canadian football, in your life, it was the next step. It was almost not that you expected it, but that's what you were planning for. This was part of the progression.
That's a good way to explain it. I mean, I don't think that it's an expectation out of a place of cockiness or thinking that you deserve anything. But I think that if you're going to achieve anything in athletics, you have to expect that you're going to be able to do it. Otherwise, why should you expect that other people think that you can do it? And so that was something that it was for me. Like, I always believed I could play in the NFL, and I still believe that. And, if I don't believe that, how am I to expect that people in the NFL are going to believe that? And so I agree. I think it's a part of the plan. It's part of the progression. And for me, it's all about like the process. And I think that you probably understand that. It's because, especially in a sport like rowing, when, like you said, you have to be in like the pain zone, and you have to learn how to train day in and day out. You have to fall in love with the process rather than the results of things. And so I think that that's kind of what I learned throughout my university career and during draft process, and something that I'm trying to continue to take into my professional career is just about, it's not necessarily about the results, about just continuing to be process oriented day in and day out.
Yeah. Thanks for actually reminding us of that, because I think for sports fans, they forget that, their team is getting closer and closer to winning the World Series, and suddenly winning becomes the important thing, rather than going, wow, we're in the World Series. Like, that's amazing. And every game should be amazing. And of course, there's disappointment if you don't win. But how you win is focusing every day on showing up and competing with in your environment, by putting it all out there, so that on race day, on play day, you've got it. And it really strikes me that you're visualizing this stuff. Like, you're visualizing playing in the NFL. You're visualizing playing in the Canadian Football League. Like, it's like those things are very tangible and tactile for you. Do you actually do formal visualization, or is this just something like it's just so in front of mind you don't even have to visualize it?
It's a good question. I think that naturally it's in the front of mind, so I don't have to visualize it. But I will say, like, being around high level sport for a little bit and getting to experience some of the stuff at pro training camps, visualization is something that's very important to practice. And I don't think I necessarily do it in my daily life as much as I maybe should, but pre-game days or before a big race, like what you said. But for me, it's really comes like the night before games. I'll take a walk, and I'll walk for like an hour, and I'll just visualize plays in my head. Or on game day, I'll take our call sheet, and I'll go out on the field, and I'll run through every single one of the plays that we have, and I'll visualize the defense moving, and I'll visualize what our offense is doing. Or I'll just go and take time and just practice calling the plays and seeing the plays in my mind play out. And I think that like those are big things, so that when it may only be one time on that whole time that I visualize that the exact movement of the defense happens to our exact play that I was thinking of, but that one time that it happens, I've already seen it. And so what's happening. And so I think that it's like super important. And it gives you confidence too when you practice seeing yourself succeed. When you see yourself succeed in your mind, and then it kind of calms you when you're out there on the game.
The fact that you're planning and you're visualizing it, and I mean, it just sounds like you're one of those people that are visualizing organically all the time as you're thinking about a play, or you're going for a walk. It's just sort of happening without you ever calling it visualization, right? It's like you're daydreaming.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of people don't realize. Like, actually, visualization is not that different than daydreaming. When you're a kid and the teacher tells you not to look out the window, because your head is in the clouds. Like, for me, that's when I was coming up with my plan. I was coming up with what I was going to do with my life. So actually, daydreaming was a real thing. And I've heard that, the body and the brain can't really distinguish between an imagined experience and a real experience. When I've been injured, visualization has been incredibly powerful for me. When I can't play the game, when I can't get in the boat and row, I've spent a lot of time visualizing the movements, visualizing how my body would feel. And, I can tell you it's profound, the effect it can have. And it's also something you can do when you're injured and you feel kind of powerless. Have you had a lot of injuries?
So I've had some injuries. I've played through most of them. but injuries are definitely tough. I haven't had to miss significant time for an injury yet, which I'm very thankful for. But I've been around many guys who have. Football as a sport where injuries are very prevalent, and I've had my share of tough ones, but I'm lucky enough that I've been able to be around people who have helped me, wrap it up or cast it up or do what I had to do to keep rolling.
You're strong enough, you're flexible enough. Does that help?
I think the way that you train prepares you for injuries a lot and prepares your body to get hit. In football, it's about being prepared to get hit at my position. But I also think it's a big mental thing.
Like mentally getting through an injury.
Yeah, and mentally, teaching yourself how to play when you're hurt. And, I played through, broken bones in my foot or my hand, and, it's not fun, but I think the more you condition yourself to do hard things, the easier it is to play through stuff when you're injured.
Well, I can relate to that. In 1992, going to the Olympics, I was hit by another boat. And as I said, I was world champion and shredded my leg, broke my ankle. I was actually told I wouldn't row again. And the mindset of, I'm going to do this, combined with the fact that as athletes, we're just in great shape. We have, great circulation. We have great musculature, which really can also protect the bone, So my bone was broken technically when I was at the Olympic Games, but, I had a lot of muscle that kind of holds it all together, right? There is a mentality of, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. This is an obstacle. And in my mind, and I think I still am like this, I think it really doesn't matter what obstacles are there. It's just like, okay, here's another obstacle, but I'm going to get where I'm going. You very much have that attitude of, I've got something in my mind and I'm going to go for it. No Canadian's ever done it, but you're going to do it. Can we talk about disappointment for a minute? Everybody's excited. You're going to go to the Green Bay Packers, right? This is a big thing. It's a dream come true. Like you said, it's a dream come true for you, but you're actually thinking the next step and you're thinking the step after. But like people around you are like celebrating like you just won the lottery, right? When it didn't happen this year, how did you recover? How did you, keep going forward and go and put it in perspective?
I think the same way you do when things go good, the same way that you said, the night that you won the World Championships, you enjoyed it, and then the next morning you wake up and you have to get back at it. It's the same thing when you're disappointed. You take the night to be upset, to be disappointed, to grieve the fact that, your hard work didn't work out for this exact opportunity. But for me, one thing that kind of centers me and keeps me, in perspective is that I trust that God has a plan for me. And that's something that I've always kind of trusted. I mean, disappointment in sports is bound to happen. Like when I wasn't a good enough hockey player to go to the OHL and I had to transition to football, or when in my university career, we lost in our first Yates Cup and then we were able to respond and get the next one, or at the end of my university career and we lost the national championship, that's always going to happen in sports. One of my coaches always said, football is a great game because, as soon as you start feeling good about yourself, football will humble you very fast.
Yeah.
And that's consistent among high level sports. And so I think it's the same mindset as when things go good. Is when things go bad, you take a moment to, appreciate, your emotions for the situation, but then you get back up and you start going the next day. And so that's kind of how that was for me. I was obviously disappointed day of, but the next morning, then, this is still what I'm trying to do. And I have to get back on the process and doing what I can to build myself back to get to this next opportunity, whatever that is. So,
and I love the faith you have in everything happening for a reason. And it sounds like in your life, that's very concrete in your belief in God and, there being a plan for, our life and your life. And I think I've always had that too. Not for me, it wasn't God. It was just whatever energy's out there, whatever is guiding my life. I always believed that whatever was happening, and I still believe whatever is happening for a reason. It's that kind of mindset is very powerful, isn't it? Because it allows you to accept and to understand that there's lessons in all these things that are happening. And ultimately, they are going to lead you to be in that next path in your life, that much more able and that much more complete, whether it's a coach or you continue to be an athlete. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, I'm sorry that opportunity didn't work out for you, but it sounds like already, in not that long a period of time, you have a really mature perspective. And I say, just talking to you, you have just generally a really mature perspective on life, being pretty young. How old are you?
23.
Oh my God. Yeah. So you're youngest than my youngest. And I'm hearing it, that you've got that ability to sort of step back and realize that this is important, but it's not the most important thing. What is the most important thing for you?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we kind of touched a little bit. To me, the most important thing the other day is my faith. And that's kind of where I think I have to start, rooted in. And I think without that, it would be harder for me to navigate some of this stuff, because I would, maybe think that making the NFL is the most important thing in my life. It's not. It's one of the most important things. I care a lot about, how I perform and chasing to make my career the best that it possibly can be. But I also think that being a good man, future father, future husband, that is the most important thing. And, following the Lord's plan for my life. And football teaches you those things. It teaches you how to go through hard things. It teaches you how you're going to handle things when they go really well. And people are telling you you're so good, and can you still be the same person in that as you are when things don't go good, and people are questioning, what's next for you. And so I think, that's something that sports does a really good job about. So that's what I would say is the most important thing for me. And then second would be, chasing my dreams and having the long career that I've always envisioned for myself, whether it's NFL, CFL. I've always envisioned being a professional football player and being one of the few Canadians that's lucky enough to make a living playing a game that I love. And so that's kind of what I've always been chasing and what I continue to chase.
I'm excited to share that Ventum Financial, a sponsor of Inflection Time, has launched their new podcast called Relevant. At Ventum, they believe that sharing someone's story is a privilege, and Relevant brings those stories to life. It's where leaders, creators, change makers share ideas, shaping business, culture, and the world, one conversation at a time. I'll be joining Relevant for an episode to talk about resilience, optimism, strength, and how these qualities help us grow through change. I hope you enjoy that episode. Check out Relevant by Ventum Financial, where people are discovered. And that really brings this idea of how we're defined by others, right? And you're obviously a very complex person, and you at 23, you've been a leader, you are a leader. Partially that's the role of quarterback, but it's been your role right since you started football, and you've really taken that on right from the get-go. You're already thinking about coaching, so you're thinking also about how you can lead other people, which is pretty exciting. When you are a star, which you are in this game, it's easy to be defined in a very limited way by the public. And I think most high-profile athletes have experienced that. Probably everybody's experienced that in some way in their life, that, you see what a person is by that public person. You bring a lot of vulnerability when we're talking here today. I've read some of, the things that have been said about you, how down to earth you are, how open you are. How do you balance that? Being open and being open-hearted and, I guess vulnerable out in that public space and being sort of like this tough football player. And how do you push against that kind of image of what a football player is?
It's a good question. It's interesting. I think one thing I'll say is, mindset-wise, I'm a very different person when I'm playing football and when I'm not playing football. And I think you have to be. The way that I lead when I'm on the field and the way that I lead a group of, 20-year-old college football players is different than the way that I talk when I'm at home and with family or with friends. But that's because I think in order to be an elite level athlete, you have to be able to turn that, next mindset on. And so I love leading in those spaces where I can flip that switch. That's really where I feel like myself excelling. But I also, like you said, I think it's important to not have my identity wrapped up in that, and that I view myself as only a quarterback or only the person that I am when I'm playing football. And that that's not what the Lord intended for me. He didn't intend me for make football an idol and for me to only view myself as worthy or as have value because I'm good at playing football.
I mean, that's like an existential crisis that athletes have. You hear about athletes who, and it's not an ego thing necessarily. I think it's just like you spend so much time as this person. Like
and people tell you it all the time.
People tell you it, but you're also like, it's like every single day, it's the first thing you think of when in the morning. Mm-hmm. It's the last thing you think of when you go to sleep. You're almost, I don't want to say obsessed, but maybe that is somewhat accurate, right?
It's very difficult. I mean, it's something that I have a hard time with. And when I say this stuff, it's also because I like to say it out loud and remind myself of these things, because it's really easy to not remember that and to put all my worth in football. And then that's really where it's harder when something difficult happens and you start to feel like, oh, I'm disappointed or I'm losing my value because something didn't happen good in sports.
Like it reflects something about you as a person versus this happened.
Yeah.
And this is in that sport field.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think a lot of athletes, I think a lot of people, when things don't work out, when you make a mistake, you go back to, oh my gosh, I'm not a good person, or I'm not the athlete I thought I was, or I'm not tough enough, or I don't handle pressure. Like there's all this like internal dialogue and actually is like incredibly limiting. When you hear that stuff coming up for you, what's your counterpoint? Is there a discipline that you have in terms of saying, like how you handle that inner voice when it's negative?
It's a good question. I have a lot of inner confidence. And so a lot of the times the way that I kind of handle if I have a negative thought is I just go back and keep going. I don't necessarily think I have something where it's like when I hear that, I kind of can think of and take me out of that. But I think naturally I was born with a good ability to like respond well in like negative situations or difficult situations. And that's what has helped me on my athletics journey. It's not necessarily because, I was always the best athlete, but it's because when other people would have wanted to give up, I didn't want to give up, or I wanted to keep pushing, or I wanted to work harder. And so I think that that's kind of where it's always come down for me is like when things are not going well, that's when it's easier for me to want to dig in and work harder to, get to what you're daydreaming about and what your kind of goals are.
And does any of that come back to your family and their values and like maybe their work ethic?
Yeah. My dad definitely taught me work ethic from a very young age. I always admired how he would go, my dad's a police officer, and he would go and work lots of overtime, overnight shifts, early in the morning shifts, just to be able to support me playing, competitive AAA hockey. And he always, taught me about working hard, even when I remember when I was playing hockey, like shooting pucks till really, really late in the morning and, working really hard in the backyard when I started playing football and just running hills and even at a young age doing what I could. And like my dad always taught me that. And so,
because as parents, it's really, I always think this, we read books about being parents. We like try to be the best parents we can be. And really it's how we are as people. It's our values. It's how we show up that teaches our kids the most, right? Like if you're saying one thing and you're doing another, I mean, the kids only watch what you do. They only understand that perspective. So it sounds like your parents were kind of modeling what you became. And they must be incredibly proud of you.
They do. They are. My mom, my dad tell me all the time how proud they are of me, and you're right. It's modeling is, I mean, not only with parents but coaches or whoever's like a leadership figure for someone else, like someone that comes to you and says something, it's can have some impact. But watching someone every single day repeatedly be the same person day in and day out, that really can ingrain something in you. And I think playing for Coach Folds at Laurier Football, he's someone who I watched every single day work tirelessly to set a standard, to set a culture there. And that's something that inspired the rest of us.
So is that Laurier?
Yeah, and that's something that inspired the rest of us to, go with that mindset, be a process-oriented group, try and build culture and work ethic. And that's because the guy that we're all looking to models that for us every single day. He doesn't just say it, he does it. He's the first guy in there at 4 a.m. every single day. He lifts with the team. He holds everyone to that standard, and he's working, just as hard as every single player on that team, if not harder. And so that's really impactful when you see someone that you're looking up to.
He sounds like he's had a huge impact in your life and your approach to the game, and the fact that you want to coach. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I just wondered, a lot of people listening are interested in sports, and I think we're all as parents too, really thinking like, what do you think can go wrong in coaching, so that it's not a positive experience for kids. So it's not, I always think that sport is not about becoming an athlete. It's about becoming a human. It's about becoming a better human. And, hopefully you love it, but ultimately why kids should play sport is not just to be healthy, but to learn about teamwork and to learn about respect and to learn about rules. And there's so many kids that quit sport, and I just wonder if you have any ideas on what might be going wrong.
I think one of the things is, and it's a very fine line, but to me, the reason you play sports is to win, but the reason you try and win is because it's hard, not just to win. And so I guess the difference for me there is like when people coach the game, especially, youth athletics and even college athletics, obviously when you get to the pros, it's a little bit different, but the reason why everyone puts so much emphasis on winning is because winning is a very difficult thing to do. And so if you teach kids how to win and how to do difficult things, that's going to make them better people, more resilient, be able to deal with adversity in their life when they're done playing sports. And you have to push kids and challenge them in order to do that. But you're not just doing that to get a win. If that's what, to me, that's kind of where I see the line is you're playing to win, but you're doing that because it's something that's difficult and it's something that you can chase, and it's something that you're putting in your kids' minds that we want to go do this, and in order to do this we're going to have to do all these difficult things and all deal with this adversity and have a process and have a plan, and then when you achieve that, or if you don't achieve that, you still became better along the way.
I mean, you're using the word win in a very holistic way, right? It's not, because you said it before, like when you're playing, you're in the game, you're in the process. I mean, this mindfulness thing, you're actually like so mindful, it's unbelievable because nothing else exists. And that's really the definition of mindfulness, is being in the moment, right? And playing sport, you're in the moment. So, I mean, people are always surprised, when you compete, you're not thinking about winning. Of course of course that's kind of what driving you, but in that moment, you're playing football.
The next thing that you need to do, what's the next technique I need to use? What's the next step along this journey, along this process? And like we were talking about earlier, it never ends. Like it's a never ending thing. When you teach kids how to win, you're not just teaching them how to win a game, you're teaching how to win every single day. And that's something that Coach Folds says is win every day in everything you do. And what's the next step along this process that I have to do to win that step of the journey? Yeah. And when it's in a game, it's what's the next play? And what's the next play after that? And whether it's a bad play or a good play, what's the next play after that?
Yeah. And I'm thinking of some of the great coaches that I've worked with and their commitment, because they show up, they're competitive, they know how much it hurts. They know how much you suffer, out there. But they also know that their job is not just winning in the literal sense. It's teaching the people they're coaching to be the best that they can be in sport and in life, because there's so much, there is so much, you're so young. So I'll tell you, there is so much connection between what you learn in sport and what you end up doing in life after sport. You know, whether I'm writing a book or watching this podcast or speaking or raising my kids, I come back to some pretty basic lessons, right? Put in the prep. Got to put in the preparation. I'm always with this podcast. I'm always like, give me more information. You know, I want to know. I want to know what's going on in this guy's head. You know, and that's just part of being an athlete. I think that need to prep, but also that resilience and resilience. I think the ability to get up after you fall, after you fail, even though maybe other people aren't calling it a failure, you perceive it as a failure. That's such a remarkable quality. You have it. I see it in you just listening and watching you, that getting up. And I'm married to an entrepreneur. He owns Good Life Fitness. And he started with 1 club, 2 club, 8 clubs, you know, got bigger. And what I find remarkable about him, and I'm seeing this in you, is how little time he takes recovering from a setback. I go into doubt. I go into fear. I go into like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not good at it. You know, I've had to fight that demon my whole life, that I guess insecurity. I don't see that in you. I see like you're a guy who's like, oh, okay, so that didn't work out. Of course you feel it. Of course it's emotional, but you're just getting up for that next thing that's happening in life. And it's so cool. And I want to talk just a little bit about your sort of plan about coaching eventually, because I'm really hearing it in you. And maybe it's a natural progression from a quarterback position, is that you're already thinking about the game in a very complex way. So what do you see after this wonderful football career that you're going to have? Hopefully playing in the NFL, if not the CFL, maybe something, who knows, right? There's twists and turns. Where's the seed of coaching? It sounds like it's planted by this coach, but where do you see it going?
Yeah, so ever since I started kind of playing football, and like I said, I fell in love of the leadership part of the game and the schematic part of the game, and I really felt like playing the quarterback position, it allowed me to use all 3 of those skill sets: physical, mental, and kind of that like leadership skill set. And ever since then, I knew that I wanted my job to be, you know, in football and in coaching. And so I want to have a long career. I want to play for 10 plus years. In these pro leagues, and hopefully coaching's a little bit down the road. But for me, like, for example, in this kind of waiting period for me of when is the next contract going to be, it's like, okay, get started on, you know, building coaching and helping out with Laurier and giving what I can to them, and starting kind of coaching some local kids in the area, some high school kids and training kids. And I enjoy doing that, and it's good for me to kind of put the different hat on, because I'm used to being the quarterback, and then now being able to put like a coaching hat on and develop that while I'm still playing has been pretty cool. And so that's definitely the plan for me, is when I'm done playing, either get into full-time coaching of a team or starting my own, you know, training business. I'm still kind of feeling out which one.
You got time.
I got time, but I do know that I enjoy, you know, being around the game, being around young players, and kind of being able to talk to them about some of these things that I've experienced in my journey. And I know there's a lot more to,
right? You are actually young. You're young players. I'm like, you are young. You're 23 years old.
No.
Tell me about being a football player. Tell me about how hard it is.
It is one of the most demanding, if not the most demanding sport, in my opinion, because we have to train for 8 months for a 3-month season. So football is all about preparation and process. You know, we're not fortunate enough to play a game where you can play 162 games here like you can in the MLB, or 82 games like you can in hockey. You know, you can only play 1 game a week for, you know, 16 to 20 weeks, and then your body's done, because it's such a physically demanding sport when you're out there and you get hit so much. That we practice all off season. You practice 5 times a week for one opportunity on game day. And so being a football player is a lot about process, and that's partly why I've learned this, because if you want to be a successful football player, you have to be, committed to that. It comes with like a lot of, which very important lifting schedule, very, regimented, and, something that you have to develop what works for you and your body and your position, both in season and out of season, but a lot of film study, a lot of, watching tape of your own self, but also of other people in preparation. And then
is there a lot of running too? Like, you run.
And a lot of running.
Really?
Yes. And then at practice, you get run. You have to condition your legs, and you have to condition your lungs and your mind. And also you have to be able to physically handle, the load of, 250, 300 plus pound men coming to try and take your head off every single play. And, so there's a lot of different kind of aspects of it.
Like, do you ever feel angry when somebody slams into you?
No, I when I'm playing, I'm in a different headspace, and I always actually like to get hit early in the game. It makes me feel into the game. Whenever I'm playing, I would tell.
That's just weird. You like to be hit. Okay.
I would tell my coach, like, I'm good if you run me once early, or if I get smoked once early, or if I get to put my pads down early. And I think that partially is for me from the hockey background, and that's how I played the game of hockey, is how I would get in the game, was try and get a big hit, or get in a mix up with someone. And so obviously, the quarterback position is very different from that, but I still like when I get hit once early in the game. It gets me into the game and gets me ready to roll.
And you've got your any athlete, when you're competing, there's this aggressive energy. I mean, to row at the Olympics, you've got it. It's an aggressive energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, like, yeah, there's Taylor the player,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, you got to turn it off. Sometimes it's hard, right? Because you're, and then you got to turn it off.
Yeah.
And I guess that helps, though, in taking the hits too, right? Because you're like, you're in that energy already.
Yeah. The switch is flipped.
Yeah. But then coming off it's got to be hard too, right? Like when you got to change gears and you're done, and like you've been hit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting that adrenaline drop. Do you have any sort of like techniques, rituals, like now we call it mindfulness, but ways of just like grounding yourself, switching gears?
I think that's somewhere that I think I can take steps in my life, but I'm a guy, like, when we would finish playing the game, I would have to watch the film like 3 to 4 times that night. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep unless I'd go and watch through all the tape.
And analyze.
Yeah, and saw all the film and watch my mistakes. And, I don't, obviously you watch the good plays, but the plays that I watched hundreds of times were the mistakes. And I would need to kind of get through that in order to let it go. Like, right after the game, the adrenaline's still going. I'm still in that mindset. Take the shower, get home, and then hopefully the film's loaded up and you can get through it. And once I would get through the film a couple times, then I could kind of let it go for the night and kind of have that night to celebrate and to enjoy the win, and then wake up the next morning and then get after it again.
Wow. So like the emotion of the game didn't affect your ability to analyze it. Like you could still be objective in the analysis, because there's emotion, right? You lose, you win, you played well, you didn't play well. So you're able to kind of step back and go like, no, I'm just looking at what happened. Yeah.
I think that if anything, the emotion can sometimes make you even more critical of yourself. Like people who, want to hold themselves to a high standard. I think there's a couple different types of athletes, but I think the type of athlete you want to be is the person who's overcritical of themselves, not over inflating themselves. Some guys after the games, they only want to watch their good plays, and they just want to watch, my touchdown or my big run and my celebration, which all that's fun, in the game. And of course that's fun to want to look at as well. But for me, it was always like, if I threw an interception, that's the clip I'm watching a bunch of times. What did we have a missed opportunity? What are the areas of this game that I can get better at, and where can I improve at?
Yeah. So you're just always looking for what's the next edge you can gain. So how do you talk to that young person who's coming up with the dream?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them about how they can keep going, what they need in order to play?
One of the things that I talk to the guys I train with a lot about is kind of what we talked about at the start, which was like, you have to believe this for yourself first and foremost. You can't expect to go out there and have other people believe that you're going to achieve the things that you want to achieve if you first don't expect that you're going to do it. And you have to be confident enough to put yourself in that mindset. I don't think that's cockiness. I don't think that's arrogance. I think that is, a healthy self-confidence in yourself that, like, I'm going to go do these things and I'm going to put my mind to that. And once I believe it, then you can start convincing other people that they should believe it as well. But a lot of people are too afraid to give themselves the permission to say that this is what I want to do, or this is my goal, or this is what I want to chase, even in your own head, because they're afraid of failure, or they're afraid of disappointment, or they're afraid that, if I fail, what's that going to mean for me? But you have to be able to get over that hump before you can even start convincing other people that they should.
That's great advice. And it, for some people, it's harder than others to come out with that confidence, right? Mm-hmm. So helping them figure out what are their blocks to that confidence got to be really important. Mm-hmm. So Taylor, not just as a football player, but as a human, if you had a superpower, which you do, what is that?
I think the thing that you kind of mentioned earlier, about your husband, and we were talking about how, like, respondability, or like how do you react to adverse situations? Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I do well at in my life, is making what I want to do happen, or putting the actionable choices in place in my life that are actually going to make change. A lot of people want to do great things. A lot of people want to chase big things, but they don't necessarily want to put in the actionable things daily to do that. And that's a hard thing that you have to train your mind to do. And I'll go through seasons of my life where I'll feel like I'm not giving enough. And I'll take a step back and remember that, I'm still pushing harder than I even necessarily realize, because my mind is always thinking, I'm like, what do I need to do more? What's the next step? And I think that's the thing that has helped me the most, is, always having that mindset of, like, looking forward and pushing forward.
I can see that. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. And I love talking about sport, and it's so cool to hear and listen to a totally different sport. And thank you too for kind of educating Canadians a little bit about, like, what this actually means to be at this level where you're being considered by the NFL, that you're looking at a professional career in either the NFL or the CFL, but also your humanness and the kind of human being you are. You're really a good person. And we really appreciate you and appreciate being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on Inflection Time. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'd love for you to follow us by subscribing and sharing our podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Inflection Time is an Archer & Co. production sponsored by Good Life Fitness and Ventum Financial. A special thank you to our incredible in-kind partners, Carter Wiley and Tallboy Water. Executive producers and directors, Michelle Archer and Phil Kluba. Producer, Christine Bays. Creative development, Sarah Carter. I'm grateful for Smythe for helping me look good. Thank you for listening.